Good afternoon, everybody. I am Cindy from the OSCC Adult Day Program. Can you believe it's August already? Having said that, starting a brand new month, I would like to talk about some of the inventions that were developed in the month of August. So let's get started. The first invention is shredded wheat. How many of you grew up on shredded wheat? I know I did. It was developed in 1890, many years ago, by a gentleman named Henry Perky. Now, this gentleman owned a cereal factory making cereals. Once the shredded wheat came out, it was so popular that that is all the cereal that he would make in his factory. All the rest of the cereals he stopped making. This next invention, can you guess what it is by the picture here? It was the zipper, and it was invented in 1891. Before that, most of the articles of clothing, men's pants or women's dresses or that, always had buttons or the little clasps, like the hook over clasps, which they found very cumbersome until this gentleman, Whitcomb L. Johnson, invented the zipper in August. What do you think this invention was? See the little hint here with a picture and crown cork stoppers? This was the bottle cap, and it was invented in 1892 by William Painter. This gentleman, as you can see, had a cork company, and most of his sealings were in, like the bottle seals were in wine, some in olive oil, different things like that. So he had come up with this bottle cap. But the funny thing was, he made more money on the bottle cap openers than he actually did in the bottle caps themselves. Because as the years went on, you could style the openers in many different styles. They eventually had the opener that took the bottle caps off and also punctured the cans, hole in the cans, all in one opener. Next invention, what do you guys think this is? Halloween treat, candy corn. I myself am not a fan of the candy corn. This is the way it was sold in these older boxes. I like the boxes, not fond of the candy. Candy corn is made from sugar, corn syrup glaze, egg whites, honey glycerin, mineral oil, wax, salt, and food coloring. Each piece of candy contains about 6 calories. About 20 million pounds of candy corn is sold annually, the vast majority of which is purchased for Halloween. And again, it was invented in the 1800s, 1898 to be exact, by George Renninger. The next invention, probably know, by the Flyswatter. In 1900s, by Dr. Samuel J. Crumbine. Now this doctor was a doctor and a little bit of a scientist. And he found lots of diseases and illnesses were coming because of flies and insects. And he noticed how many eggs the fly actually laid on things. So he came up with this fly swatter, and as you see in the picture here, it was more like tongs when it was first invented. They were metal around the outside with the screening, like the window screening in the inside. And you'd have to try and clasp onto the fly. Well, as you can imagine, it was very difficult to do that. So within a very short period of time, he came up with the metal one. It was a metal on the outside like that and mesh in the middle. And that's what they used for quite a while until they came up with the plastic washable ones, disposable ones. What do you think this invention is? It looks like something from outer space, doesn't it? It was hearing aids. And they were invented in 1902 by a gentleman named Miller Reese Hutchinson. Can you imagine walking around with those on your head? The next invention was the tea bag. In 1908, a New York merchant, Thomas Sullivan, sent tea bag samples to customers in small bags just to save some money, but they boiled the bag without opening them. This is how the tea bag was born. So before that, it was all loose tea. And sometimes they would put the loose tea into cheesecloth, tie it, and use it, and then wash the cheesecloth. But this gentleman wanted to send some overseas already pre-packaged, and thus the tea bag was born. Can anybody think of what game this might be? What card game? I'll give you a little bit of a hint. The name is named after an alcoholic drink. Okay? Gin Rummy card game. And it was developed in 1909 by a gentleman named Elwood T. Baker. And as you can see in these photographs, they're all men. Way back then, it was mostly all men that would play the card games. Well, the gin rummy card games like this, and other card games that included betting money. Can you think of what this is? It's pretty easy when you look at the picture, isn't it? The toaster. And it was developed in 1919 by Charles Strife. How many of you went camping when you were younger, or even now when you're older? I remember going camping with my parents and didn't have a toaster, of course, because there was not electricity when you're camping. So they took a clothes hanger and they bent it up like this, the two sides, and it made a toaster, and they put it over the fire. And most of the time you got one side was burnt and the other side was raw, but it was still toast. Okay, what do you think? Well, obviously it gives it out in the picture. The cheeseburger. And it was developed in 1924. Hamburgers came out before that, of course, but the thought of putting cheese on the hamburger came out in 1924. And it was actually first developed from the Humpty Dumpty Company when they opened their restaurant, and they developed the cheeseburger. I didn't even know Humpty Dumpty had restaurants. I thought they were just a chip company. It was developed by Lionel Sternberger. See the burger on the end? What do you think this is? Well, it gives it away here. This is masking tape, developed in 1925. And I always wondered what the difference between masking tape and duct tape was. Well, masking tape's for masking, like blocking and protecting when you're painting, and duct tape is for sealing things. And it was developed by Richard Gurley Drew. Obviously, this one gave it away a little bit. Koolaid, developed in 1927 by Edwin Perkins. Some cool little facts. 1927 is when it was invented, but it wasn't until 1928 that it first appeared in markets. In 1953, General Foods bought the brand. This is the old ads that they used to have to advertise for the Kool-Aid drink. 10 cents a glass. Can you imagine? 10 cents. What does this look like? Shows right here what it is, but that's quite scary actually. I don't know if I'd want to put that near my legs or my face. The electric razor. 1928, it came out. And if you can guess the gentleman's last name, gives it away right there. Jacob Schick. He invented the electric razor. Can you think of what this is? Big pictures. Chocolate chip cookie. Was invented in 1930 by a lady named Ruth Wakefield. And they wanted to put her in the picture. When Toll House bought it, they wanted to put Ruth in the picture, in the cover. But she was so shy and bashful, she didn't want any part of having her picture on the cover of the cookie ad. So they chose somebody who had red hair and the big smile, and she approved who they put on. This one is deodorant in 1941. And it was developed by a lady named Edna Murphy. And it was advertised for women. Back then, men weren't wearing deodorant back then. So a lot of these products that came out were specific for women. And there was one article that I read that made me chuckle a bit, that a gentleman had mentioned, I don't know why women need deodorant. They don't do much work. They don't sweat. So I thought that was quite comical. And do you think you can guess what this is? Give you a few seconds. It is a microwave oven. See the size of this thing? That was the original microwave oven. Well, actually, that was the prototype. That was that big. They were basically from the top here, whoops, to there. That was really the size of it. And it was developed in 1945 by Percy Spences. That's the gentleman right there. The next invention was hairspray in 1948 by a lady named Helen Curtis. I always find it extremely interesting to look at the blueprints of how they developed it. Like, what was the thought process and how they came up with the idea and finally put it together as a product. The next invention, what do you think this is? Again, there's the blueprints of when it was developed. See if you guessed it. A marker pen, so a marker. And it was developed in 1953 by this gentleman right here, and his name was Yukio Horio. I don't think I'm saying that right, but there it is down at the bottom. Sorry about that. Whoops. Second one was TV dinners, and they were developed in 1954. A little bit of a story. The gentleman, Swanson recruited this gentleman who was basically a scientist. He was trying to come up with foods for astronauts. And he came up with some dinners and stuff, but they didn't dehydrate well for astronauts. So he made them into frozen meals. So Swanson's recruited him to make dinners, create frozen dinners for home. His name was Jerry Thomas. Here's another blueprint and a giant invention over here on the side. What do you think that might be? It was the laser. And it was invented in 1957 by a gentleman named Theodore Maiman. Actually, Theodore came up with the concept of a laser, but this other gentleman by his side drew up the blueprints and tried to put it together. So it was really a combined effort. And you look at the size of these lasers, something like you'd see in the Frankenstein movies and stuff, compared to what the size of the lasers are today. Like you can even buy the small little pen lasers that you buy at the dollar store to drive your cats crazy. Come a long way. 1965, the first cordless phone was invented by Terry Paul in 1965. Now people have the freedom to walk around their house and talk on the phone. I remember the first cordless phone. It took up your whole face. You had to have two hands to hold it to your ear. It was so big. And then they came smaller, and then they became the flip phone. And now we have all the touch phones, and they went down to smaller. Now some of the phones are getting back up to the bigger size, but great invention that was. The next one is a compact disc, which was developed in 1965 by a gentleman named James T. Russell. He patented it in 1965, but it wasn't released to the public until 1981. It would store information, but it was read-only, like you couldn't record onto it. You could only read off of it. How the CD works, information on the CD is read using a reflected laser light. See, laser before, laser now, how small they were inside to make these CDs. Next thing it tells you here, gives it away. First personal computer. Whoops. It was invented in 1971. Sorry, I'll go back. Sorry about that. The creator was Ed Roberts, and he came up with the term personal computer. What do you think this is? Something you eat a lot of at the movie theater, but what can you do at home to make these? This is the popcorn bag, specifically the microwave bag. 1978 it was developed, so not long after microwaves. Developed by Percy Spencer. Now I remember before the microwaves, we used to buy the Jiffy Pop popcorn. You guys remember that? In the tin container that popped up nice and big. I used to love watching that. I actually sometimes buy it for my grandkids when they come over because it's so much fun to watch. I hope you enjoyed learning about some of the inventions that were created in the month of August. And I hope you have a wonderful day and check out the rest of the videos